Welcome back to Cultivating Conversations, your go-to space for all things HR, leadership, and workplace compliance. I'm your host, Latisha Newby, attorney, HR consultant, and the founder of Cultivate HR Consulting. Here, we have unfiltered conversations about what it takes to build strong workplaces, to lead with impact, and to actually navigate this ever-changing world. Today, I'm thrilled to sit down with Marie Deveaux, the brilliant mind behind High Tides Consulting. Now, Marie is a dynamic leadership and business coach. She's dedicated to helping women and BIPOC professionals really amplify their voices, own their own leadership, and create lasting impact. So today we're going to dive into all the realities of inclusive leadership, entrepreneurship, and really just the power of communication in today's workplace. So whether you're an HR professional, business leader, or someone who's just passionate about making workplaces better, this episode is going to be for you. Grab your coffee, whatever you want to drink, get comfy, and let's go ahead and jump into this conversation. But before we do, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so that you never miss these conversations that we're having. All right, let's get into it. Hi, Marie. How are you?
Hey, Latisha, I'm doing really well. Thanks. Glad to be here.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for being with us today. Let's get into this conversation. Now, Marie, I did a little bit of research on you, and I've seen that you've had quite a diverse career, right? So from education management to becoming a licensed investment advisor and even a real estate investor. Tell me, what inspired you to transition into executive and leadership coaching, and how has that influenced your approach in this space?
Yeah, so I love one that you've got your full LinkedIn stalker on. I appreciate that. But so much of my career was really driven from some advice that my older brother gave me when I first got out of undergrad. And as most like 20 somethings, I had no idea what I wanted to do in life or in work. And his advice was really simple. He said, well, try something. And if you don't like it, try something else.
Right.
And I
Right.
have lived by that. I work by that. We just going to try and try again. But so much of my career really started because I was really interested in youth development.
Okay.
And so my journey started in AmeriCorps. I worked for the CASE program, which was funded out of the Shriver Center. And I lived in Maryland, in Capitol Heights, just outside of DC for a year. And in that service year, supporting youth, I got exposed to education. I got exposed to the juvenile justice system. I got exposed to social work. And after that year, as many people, and I think AmeriCorps or the Peace Corps will tell you, it was the worst year and the best year of my life. Because I just learned so much about myself. And my passion has always really been in education. I do still to this day believe education and the application of knowledge is how we are able to change the world. And so that started me on a journey in education management. I worked in charter schools. I worked in SES programs, so Title I funded after school programs that were helping close the achievement gap. And I also worked in spaces like Kumon and Kaplan, which were really focused on multi-site management for, again, academics and helping children grow. And in all of those spaces, the thing that was consistent for me was noticing that it wasn't the kids that were really the problem. It was always the grown-ups. And if you worked in a school, you know this to be true. Kids are easy, grown-ups make life kind of hard.
Right.
And
Right.
so I really focused my energies in those years on how to build better leaders, how to support the people who were running these programs, how to help them get a new sense of what maturity looks like in the professional setting, which of course translated into a career in leader development. So oftentimes when I tell people about learning and development and my journey, I tell people, well, I'm an L&D professional by accident, but I think everyone who's an L&D is in it by accident. These are folks who are just really passionate about people getting better, about people meeting their full potential. And that's exactly the work that I was doing in 2016 when I started this business, which if you think about the things that we do in a corporate setting to develop leaders, it's a lot of coaching. It's a lot of bringing people new self-awareness. It's a lot of holding people accountable to the actions that get them to where they say they want to be and how their teams should operate in the workplace. So it was really kind of a seamless transition for me in that regard. That's one version of the story. But, you tell me if we want to get into the workplace trauma of it all, because I'm happy to go there too.
Listen, I think, I think the realness of your experiences it helps listeners, right? Because you're not the only one who's had that. So let's talk about it.
Oh, okay.
If you're
Okay.
up for it, if you're up for it.
I'm like, hold on to your hats, friends. But so when I started working in the charter school sector, it was at a time when everyone was really excited about that space. I was deeply inspired by Jeffrey Canada and Harlem Children's Zone, this idea about holistic learning models where they were supporting families from when the kids were babies. They were providing education to the parents and the grandparents and this whole community model of education.
Yeah.
So I started working at Success Academy Charter Schools in New York City.
Okay.
And at the time when I started there, they had 4 schools, and in 4 years, they had 40 schools.
Wow.
And I came on as a director of operations to support the learning and development function because the charter school model is really built on hiring kids straight out of college to run schools.
Right.
And that is on the teacher side. That is also on the operation side. So these folks don't know nothing about nothing.
Right. Right.
When it comes to the world of work, oftentimes when it comes to community engagement, which is a huge part of the K through 12 experience.
Yes.
And I was tasked with training these people, not just on how to run the business of a school, but also how to think about running a community, engaging in community. So me and my little strappy team of 4 were training 3,000 operation professionals every school year. And then that also extended to supporting the academic staff, because while the business managers were under my remit, the business manager works very closely with the school principal. So there was a lot of interfacing on both sides. That 4 years was the hardest, most grueling job of my life. Yes, I got to build a department. I was so proud of my team. We did a lot of great work, but it was undoubtedly a very toxic place.
Yeah.
I was working 60, 70 hours a week. There was very little forgiveness when it came to people having a family or a life outside of work. So this idea of work-life balance did not exist.
Yeah.
After 5 years, after building my department, there was nothing left for me to learn at this organization. Okay. Right. And so I raised my hand and I was reporting to the COO at the time. And I said, hey, I've done everything I can on the operation side. I think I should switch and move over to the academic side of the house and really help build out training for the teachers.
Right.
And to do that, I then needed to report to the chief academic officer. And she was a white woman. She was probably the exact same age as me.
Okay.
She did not have children or a family, which I had at the time. She had not worked in learning development or professional development, which I had my entire career. And it became very apparent in my first meeting with her that this was someone who was threatened by my knowledge and expertise.
Yeah.
And I was sharing for her my vision for what I could do for her department. And she was asking me to define words that were coming out of my mouth.
Right.
Her management style, because she was not a manager, she was very much a micromanager, and she very much did not want me to share new ideas in the presence of others. And she also explicitly said to me, I don't even really know what you do here. So there just was not a lot of appreciation for what I brought to the table. And at the same time, she did not want me to share what I could bring to the table.
Right. Right.
And so we're getting ready for summer training, which is our big push, right? And I had come into the office early one morning so that I could have a conversation with my sister. And so when I say early, this is 7 a.m. I'm in the office. And I get on a phone call with my sister, and I'm like telling my sister, like, this has been really challenging. I don't think I can continue to work here.
Yeah.
And my sister says to me, well, can you just like stick it out to the end of the year? Can you like wait till the end of the year? And this is summer, so we're talking like 6 months. Can you wait 6 months? And I'm like, girl, I'm about to die tomorrow, right? But I told her, I was like, you know what? The COO just evaluated me, and I got a perfect performance review, which is like unheard of. Everyone, I mean, I work in L&D. There's always room to grow. Like if it's a scale, I'm giving everyone 9s, right? But he was like, you've done everything I've asked you to do. You've grown this entire department. At the time, we had vetted and started moving everything to a new LMS. Like I had done everything. Perfect performance review. So I was due a 5-figure bonus that was going to get paid out in 7 weeks.
Okay.
So I said, well, I could wait 7 weeks.
Right. Right.
I could wait 7 weeks. I could get my money. And so that's what we agreed on. And I hung up the call with my sister. And I remember because it was a Friday morning that this happened, because later that day, right around 5 o'clock, my new manager, the chief academic officer, she sends me a message. She says, "Oh, hey, I wanna chat with you before you head out for the day." I said, "Okay, that's fine." So I sit down with her and she says, I heard you. I heard you talking about me. And I was like confused because 7 o'clock in the morning, no one else is in the office. And the office I worked in, you could see who was in the rooms because there was glass on the doors of the conference rooms, but the rest of the room was solid, right? She's like, "I heard you talking about me." So in my mind, I'm immediately like, so you came into the office, you saw me in a conference room, and then you came and you sat in the adjoining conference room so you could hear my conversation at 7 o'clock in the morning. Okay.
Right, right.
But she says, "I heard you talking about me." And I'm also like, so what? Because we had those conversations. We were both very clear that we were oil and water. It was not a good manager to direct fit. So I said, there was nothing I said that I haven't already spoken to you about. Like, we have very different management styles, and this is not really working. I said, "So what do you want me to do about it? Because it's 5 o'clock on a Friday, and we got to finish planning training come Monday. What are we talking about?"
Right.
And she gave one of those, "Well, I don't know what I'm going to do, but there's going to be consequences" type of things. Right. So at the time I was living in central Brooklyn at the time. And our offices were in Lower Manhattan. If you're not familiar with New York, I'm giving y'all a quick geography, right? Lower Manhattan. So from central Brooklyn, I lived in the Midwood, Kensington area of Brooklyn. To get to the financial district where the office was, it's about 45 minutes in the morning on the sub. Our schools are all across the 5 boroughs, right? One of our headquarters type schools is up in Harlem on 125th Street, which for me to get there from where I live in Brooklyn, we're talking an hour and a half commute. Okay.
Right.
They sent me this email talking about, "I need you to meet me Monday morning at 7 a.m. in Harlem for a meeting with the executive director of the organization." So, okay, we're gonna be cute. Okay.
Right.
So I put on my Ankara pants. I pick my fro out to about here. I get myself a peppermint tea from the corner man, and I walk into this Harlem school, and we sit down for this meeting, and they're telling me, "You should be so lucky that you still work here. Michelle is the best educator in the country. You should be so grateful. We're even giving you a chance, and we're going to give you 6 weeks to turn it around."
Oh.
Turn what around? I have a perfect performance review.
Right.
What is the real problem here? I said, okay, fine. Now, mind you, I've worked in L&D my entire career. All my best friends are HR. So I'm like, all you just told me is you're going to put me on a PIP without putting me on a PIP because I am in 2 protected classes, and now you need to build a file.
Right.
That is all you just told me.
Right.
So I had already spoken to my attorney over the weekend.
Right.
Eyes wide open. Okay. Not to mention, they're telling me they're putting me on a 6 weeks performance review, which means what?
You're not going to get your bonus.
I'm not going to get my bonus. And so 6 weeks to the day, when they call me in to let me go, for some reason, the head of HR was surprised I had already cleared out my desk. I had nothing left there. "Well, how did you know this was?" I'm like, "Are you?
Yeah.
You had just spent the last 6 weeks shutting me out, right? After that Monday meeting in Harlem, they start making announcements that I am not to be over any decision-making authority over anything having to do with learning. They disband my entire team and reallocate them to different people across the organization.
Wow. Yeah.
They, These are the things that are happening. It gets to the point where I'm in meetings, I can't look people won't look me in the eye in meetings.
Yeah.
Right? I got people who work in HR that are texting me what's going on because they see the paperwork coming across their desk. "We're getting rid of Marie?"
Right.
Like, what is going on? It doesn't make any sense, right?
Right.
But the day that they fire me, right, I leave the HR meeting, and I had a cute little bag with me too, right? No big bag, right? Because I don't have no laptop. I don't got none of your stuff. I had this cute little bag. I said, okay, I leave there. I get in a cab because I got to fly across the country to California because I got 2 trainings to do with Facebook the next day. Keep it moving.
Right.
Keep it moving.
Right.
If you don't appreciate what I do, I know plenty of people who do, right?
Right.
You were lucky to have me, and now you missed out. And that was really how I started my business and jumped into full-time work as a coach and a facilitator, because no one has time for the madness. And
Right.
honestly, that first year in business, I really focused so much energy on supporting other Black women who were in that
Yeah.
transition, right?
Yeah.
Because we
Yeah.
experienced that
That's
workplace
right.
toxicity, that low-key bullying that no one
Yes.
wants to acknowledge, but happens far too often, far too
Right.
often.
Right.
But that's how my practice got
Yeah.
started.
No, and so you first of all, you said so many things in that story and in that experience, and I'm glad you acknowledged like so many of us deal with this, right? It's not overt, it's not blatant, but clearly the environment is shifting, right? The things that I used to be doing are slowly being micromanaged or attacked or discussed, right?
Mhm,
And
mhm.
a lot of times, employees don't know what to do in that space because they're in a situation where it's like, man, I have to get up and come back to this place tomorrow. I have to get up and deal with these people. And this environment is not good for me, right? I know it's toxic. I know it's, not a great space for me, but I got a job. I got bills to pay. I need to still
Mhm.
take care of these things. What advice, and we didn't plan to talk about this, but like what advice would you give to someone who is listening to us right now saying, man, Marie, tag, I'm dealing with something so similar, like what do I do? Like, you have any thoughts or advice that you would give to people, somebody who might be going through something similar right now?
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing that I'll say is something that you touched on there around oftentimes we feel beholden to toxic environments because we need a paycheck.
Right.
And this comes up a lot for me in working with especially Black women who are
Yeah.
transitioning and trying to make that leap and being brave enough to make that leap. And my question is always, well, how often do you let money stop you from living the life
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
right? Because
Yeah.
if you are living in fear and that kind of scarcity where you think you can't go and create what you need
Yeah.
someplace else, that is
Yeah.
what is trapping you. It's not all that toxicity people are slinging,
Right.
it's your own mind that has you captive because you keep taking it.
Yes, yes. No, that's right. And I think too, especially now in 2025, I would say, 10, 20 years ago, you may not have saw the opportunities. But like now with the internet, with social media, with so many ways to connect and really get yourself out there, it's not to say it's not hard, but it's much more accessible to do, right? It's much more easy to promote yourself, to promote what you're doing and kind of put it out there. But I think you're right. There's a big part of it is how much do you believe in yourself? How much is, what you're experiencing more important than how you feel about yourself, right? Or what you're willing to put up with. I think too often we kind of play that balance of like, oh, but I need to have this job. I need to have this paycheck. But really, if it's impacting you and your well-being, if it's impacting your mind, if it's impacting how you show up every day, is it worth it? Right? I
Yeah.
mean, I think, yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, there's trade-offs in everything, but I think especially now where I am now in business and who I am is completely
Yeah.
transformed from where I was,
Right.
9 years ago when I
Right.
started this practice. But there is something to thinking about boundaries
Yeah.
and what you're willing to take because I've always been a firm believer. You train people how to treat you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right? When you accept behaviors that don't have you feel good and you don't say anything and you don't stand up for yourself, you are de facto giving someone permission to treat you that way.
Yeah.
And so often, what we need to learn to do is really protect our boundaries and honor ourselves in the relationships, the situations that we're in. And that's a huge part of entrepreneurship for sure, but just a huge part of being an autonomous human being.
Thank you. I mean, thank you for kind of walking us through your background, how you got there, And a lot of times I think, this type of story is not uncommon, right? People are in an environment that no longer serves them. They get laid off, they get let go, they decide that this environment isn't working, and then they transition into their own. So when you started High Tides in 2016, and you mentioned that you really liked working very particularly with Black women, right, who may have had similar experiences. How did that go in the beginning of your business, just kind of getting it off the ground, finding Black women who were willing to kind of take that leap with you?
hmm Yeah, well, I think finding clients for me was actually very easy in the beginning. And I think a lot of that is because I wasn't anyone different than who I was in the corporate space. And I've always been an avid networker. LinkedIn is still my favorite platform. It's the only place I play out in these social media streets.
Right.
And when I saw the writing on the wall, even before, I got let go, right? That 6 weeks notice they gave me, I
Right.
heard.
Prepare.
Okay.
That's right.
My LinkedIn engagement went through the roof. I had already, and just to be clear, I'm also a proud Caribbean American. My mother is Jamaican. My dad's from the Bahamas. This is the first time in my life today, like it's the first time in my life where I have not had multiple jobs, right?
Yeah.
So when they told me we're giving you 6 weeks, some type of performance plan for girl who has a 5-star
Right.
performance review, I was like, oh, okay. So let me tell all my consulting clients, I'm gonna have a lot more availability.
Right. Right.
Right. The first thing I did, because I was already a trained public speaker, I worked in L&D, I do facilitation, I do
Right.
instructional design. I had no problem picking up consulting clients, and I already had relationships with a couple other training companies who
Yeah.
I was subcontracting with. So it was just a phone call. I got more time available. Go ahead and book me up. That's the
Right.
first thing.
Right.
The beauty of working through third parties when you're getting started in your business is they're paying you to market yourself to your
Yeah.
target audience. So working for another training company, I'm now hobnobbing with the leads of L&D and HR at all of these huge companies, and they're putting me in a
Right.
room with 30 of their other employees, right?
Right.
Making real connections with all of those people and demonstrating my knowledge with all of those people. And best
Yeah.
believe, after every workshop, we all getting connected on LinkedIn.
That's right. That's
Okay.
right.
So I'm
Yes.
building my little funnel. I'm building my arsenal. I'm thinking about my email list,
That's
right? When
right.
they gave me 6 weeks notice, okay, I'm gonna work in the atrium across the street because my lunch hour, I got to build my website.
That's right.
I got to write my blog content. I'm
Yeah.
getting certified through HubSpot on
Yeah.
how to be an inbound marketer, right? I'm
Yeah.
educating myself to
That's
prepare for
right.
that transition. And so I had a bevy of people who already I had established some trust and rapport with, that know, like, and trust that they talk about.
Right.
People
Right.
knew who I was and that I was good stuff.
Right. Right.
And even still, those first couple of years, people would get my newsletter. Oh, can you come in at this company, at that company? Because they'd seen me or they'd worked with me or they'd experienced.
Right.
And so I tell people the best marketing is to be yourself and show up that way all the time.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that was really, really supportive for me. I had an extensive network of people who were willing to give me a shot and say my name in rooms that I wasn't in. And I
Yeah.
built my business from there.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I think you gave some good tips too about anybody who might be thinking about transitioning, right? Really preparing yourself, start putting yourself out there, putting content out there, sharing information, letting people know that you are an expert in your space so that when something comes across, right, and they're like, "Oh, I remember her. Let me connect with her and see if she can help me." So I think that's a great tip too for people. So one of the things I know in your work, like you emphasize leadership and making sure that even executives and organizations, right, are really defining what it means to be good leaders. What are some of the challenges that you see that leaders are really facing today, and how does your coaching kind of help them overcome some of those obstacles?
Yeah. Well, I think especially in a North American and a United States context, the biggest
Hmm.
challenge is leaders are afraid of becoming political
Yeah.
and really fearful of engaging in any type of dialogue that could be polarizing.
Yeah.
Which is, comical in some degree because everything is potentially polarizing.
That's right. That's right.
Right?
Right.
What did they say?
Two people
Opinions are like
disagree.
loot goals, okay? Like everyone has thoughts about things.
That's right.
And in our current climate, there are a lot of things that are happening at the legislative level that are really impacting our social environments,
That's
right?
right.
And our civil liberties. And
That's right.
that touches workers everywhere. And so one of the challenges I think leaders are having are really finding their voice and standing firm in their beliefs as
Yeah.
they lead because they don't want to alienate anyone.
Right.
Which, that's a beautiful notion. But what I want to offer is how do you know you're doing good work if you're not making anyone upset?
Right. Right. Right.
One of the key things I learned as a business owner, and I think a key marketing tip for your audience, a key branding tip for people is you are not for everybody, and that's a
That's
good
right.
thing.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
That is a good
Absolutely.
thing.
Yep.
And that's why and how people find community. You were looking for the people who are aligned with you, who appreciate you, who
That's
understand
right.
what you're up to in the world, who are going to acknowledge you for those things. And that's
Yeah,
not everybody, and that is okay,
that's right.
right? When we try to please everybody, we support nobody, and that's ineffective leadership. You have to stand for something. You have to stand
Exactly,
for something.
exactly. And I was going to say just that, right? Like the people pleasing gets us nowhere, right?
Yeah.
Decisions don't get made, things don't get accomplished. It really is going to have more harm on your business because you can't make everybody happy, even in the organization, right?
Right.
Employees don't all agree on everything, right? And so until you as a leader take a stand and say, this is our values, this is what is important to us, here is where we're going to be, the rest of that is just going to be chaos, right? You have to be able to take that stand and really position your employees, position your staff around what you believe in. What is your company really about? Versus, oh, I want to try to make this person happy, or if I say that, that's gonna make that person unhappy. We can't please everybody. It's just there's no way, right?
You can't.
Yeah.
It's our mission, so
That's
give it
right.
up.
That's right. So let's talk a little bit about some of the services that you offer. What are you doing now? What is your consulting firm offering?
Mhm.
Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so a few things. So we've always offered coaching,
Okay.
and that's something we do one-on-one, but we also do group and team coaching as well. And then in 2020 and 2021, we got dragged into the B2B space.
Right. Right.
So we do offer quite a bit of facilitation work, workshop facilitation, as well as some bespoke instructional design work
Okay.
around leadership and communication skills in the workplace. And a lot of that is also driven by, again, looking at healthy workplace culture,
Right.
because I think that is something that has really remained really close to our heart, is that we're in it to make it easier for BIPOC and women to thrive in the
Right.
workplace.
Right. I
That
love that.
the tagline of the company is where you work should nurture who you are.
I love that.
That's what we live by. And so however we can get the leaders lined up to support those types of environments, that's what we're up to. But that's kind of a shorthand list of some of our
Yeah.
services. And we do offer, of course, some on-demand learning and
Okay.
build products to support those efforts as well.
I love that. I love that. I think about, you mentioned a little bit earlier about being political, and we know right now, like diversity, equity, and inclusion is and has been under attack. Like there's no other way to say it, right? But to just be very clear. And so I want to talk about how in your work as a consultant and in your organization, how are you helping organize, or how have you helped organizations kind of navigate some of these challenges, especially now when we're looking at potentially a lot of organizations are thinking about funding being tied to what they do, and how they need to modify what they do so that it doesn't impact the money, right? Which ultimately impacts bottom line, which a lot of times makes business owners want to cower away, right? Because they need those funds coming in. So just thinking about how are some ways that your organization continues to elevate, diversity, equity, inclusions, and really supports organizations in times like we are right now.
Yeah. Well, so much of the work that we do at High Tides is really focused on leadership and communication, and
Yeah.
that has been consistent. My career has been in leader development, and a lot of that is driven by communication skills for leaders, right? Um, that's executive presence, that's moderating dialogue, that's how to have a good feedback conversation, that's how to conduct a performance review, that's one-on-ones, that's all of it, right? When I think about DEI, I did not call myself a DEI consultant
Right.
until 2021 when people asked me if I was a DEI consultant,
Yeah.
because that was the language people were conditioned to use to talk about
Right.
these problems people have been working on for very, very long time,
Yes.
right?
Exactly.
Just like I don't go around calling myself a civil rights leader,
That's right.
but that is what I do, right?
Right.
On LinkedIn, you only have so many characters to describe to people in that headline
Right.
what it is you do. I am a coach, and I am an inclusive leadership development facilitator.
Yeah.
When people are navigating the current climate where DEI is under attack,
Right.
I am reminded that so many of our efforts have been rebranded so many times, it is
That's right.
baffling.
That's right.
When people try to tell me that DEI is not the same as civil rights, I tilt my head to the side.
Mm-hmm.
This work was born out of the civil rights
That's
movement,
right. That's right.
right? We have been having these same conversations for what feels like millennia.
Yes. Yes.
This is not
Yes.
new.
Right.
Now, we come up with new ways to talk about it. We find
Right.
ways to use coded language to not talk about it,
Right.
but the work persists
Right.
and it will continue until we are all free and liberated.
That's right.
So again, leaders get to choose what they want to stand on.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
am really encouraged to see so many companies that even in this current political climate are steadfast in their commitment
Right.
to the cultures they are creating for their employees.
That's
And
right.
it really begs the question, who was serious in the first place?
That's right.
Because if you were able to disavow a culture of inclusion with the strike of a pen, was it
Right.
really the culture, or was
Right.
it a box you were checking for optics?
That's right.
Because why is it, right? Costco, Delta Airlines, Ben and Jerry's,
That's right.
right?
Right.
Southwest Airlines. There's a laundry list of organizations that
Yes.
are like, this does not impact us at all because it is embedded in our culture and how we operate.
That's right.
DEI is not a department.
Right. That's right. That's
Okay.
right.
Humanity is not a department at your
That's right.
organization. Compassion is not a department. It's how
Right.
you operate. It is embedded in everything. If it is so easy for me to remove DEI in your organization, you weren't about this life anyway.
That's right.
Thank you. Good data.
That's right. That's
I
right.
know where you stand,
Right.
heard, seen, understood.
Right.
Everything's not for everybody. I
Right.
know where to and how to move, right?
Right.
And so again, I think it comes back to this idea of people not being afraid to displease others,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And that's really it. I
Yeah.
don't know if I
Yeah.
answered your question though.
No,
Latisha.
no, that's good. It's good. And it's funny because it makes me think about even HR as a space, right? And so, my background, my career has been in HR. And even a couple of years ago, as I started doing more of this work around specifically DEI, for me, it was like, yo, this is what we've been doing. This is HR at its finest. This is really
Right.
workplace culture. I don't care what you call it. You can call it whatever makes you feel good. But it's still the same work that we were doing 5 and 10 years ago. How do we
Right.
treat people right? How do we make sure that our policies and our processes are equitable? How do we
Mhm.
make sure that we're not doing anything that's out of alignment and that's going to create an environment where people are going to leave, right?
Yeah.
Our goal is HR is to, and people always say, HR is for the company. HR is both. We have the privilege of understanding the business, but we are also responsible for checking the business, right? We need to make sure that leaders are prepared, that they're ready and willing. And if they're not, it is our responsibility to also help our leadership, right? Make sure people are in the organization to do the organization service, to do it well, not just to be a boss, not just to exert the power. When you were talking about your story earlier, I thought, man, that leader just wanted to exert some power over you, right? And it's like that is not what leadership is about, right? It's like, when you are in those spaces, your employees are going to go, they're going to feel that, right? And you're going to have this revolving door, which ultimately costs the company money, right? So, I always laugh when we talk about like, oh, well, do we call it DEI or do we call it DEIB or do we call it DEIA or IED or whatever? For me, I'm like, call it whatever makes you feel good, right? As long as we are doing the work to make this better. Exactly. I love that. I love that.
It's so funny. I love that reflection, Latisha. So I was actually thinking about this morning of how words are so tricky. And this is something I talk about often and I'm reflecting about often, because words are a poor excuse for how we want to transfer a thought and idea from one person to another.
Mm-hmm.
And I think of the word tree, and in my mind, there's an image of a tree, and you hear the word tree, and the tree in your head looks different.
That's right.
But we agree, we're still talking about trees, right?
That's right. That's
Somehow
right.
we make it happen, right? We make it happen. And the point that I'm using the word tree is less important that you understand what I'm talking about, right? And I think so oftentimes we get caught up in the letter of the language instead of the spirit of it.
Yes.
And so in this season, when there's an explicit attack on a couple of letters,
yes,
you're not going to break my spirit. Okay.
That's right. Yeah, and I think it's unfortunate, but I also am very excited about how companies are looking at how to navigate the complexities of what's happening in the government, but to still be able to do the work that they're trying to do, right? And
Right.
so,
Right. And this is the part that's really interesting. And I was speaking to another explicitly like an employment attorney about this, and even thinking about the current climate where a lot of folks are very actively boycotting brands based on how they align around
that's
these
right.
issues. And I told her, yeah, I myself, I avoid a lot of big box stores and have
Right.
for a while because of how their general policies on how they treat
Right.
their workforce.
Right.
And many of the companies that we're seeing who are pulling back from DEI, I'm like, well, they were no good anyway. Like, we've
Right.
known about their labor practices.
Right.
Like, this is not news. So they
Right.
revoked that statement, but they already were showing you who they were, right?
Right. Right.
But one of the things she really brought to mind was, well, the United States is a very litigious culture.
Yes.
And a lot of what these organizations are doing is really to protect themselves from risk.
Right.
And so it's not that necessarily they believe or enact in a way that's in alignment with what the current administration is putting forward, but they are trying to stay in business
That's
and are
right.
trying to protect themselves from just being sued.
Yes, that's right.
Because that is what this is doing, is empowering people to
Yes.
bring litigation against people for some of this activity that is essentially
Yes.
just advocating for civil rights and social justice in the workplace.
That's right.
So I say that to say it is a very nuanced space. We are in a very interesting time in terms of how people are negotiating what's legal and what's just, because we know those are not always the same.
Yep, that's right.
And oftentimes our laws lag behind the needs of our society. And I think that is something for us to remember as well. Oftentimes the people are saying what they need and they have to push for it to be made law and for laws to change in accordance. So that's a real reality and nuance of this dialogue as well.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right there. I think you're absolutely right. So as we wrap up, I want to before I let you go, what's coming down the pipeline, right? Like, what are you working on? What do you envision for the future? How are you planning to continue to support communities? Tell us what you doing.
My goodness. So we're always doing so many things. But right now, we're here in the month of March. We're launching our new LMS on our platform. So another way of delivering some of our on-demand content for managers, essential manager skills, as well as looking at managing diversity on teams. So operationalizing equity, these kind of skills through our online platform, as well as a new ebook around workplace behaviors and starting to identify workplace toxicity where it shows up. Those are things that are on the horizon. And then I do have my own book, full-length book, coming out very, very soon, spring 2025. So folks can look out for that as well, talking about the power of language to inform community and belonging in the workplace. So happy to
love that.
Invite people, follow me.
Yes.
So you know what's happening.
Tell us. How do they connect with you? How do they find you? How do they connect with you?
Yeah, well, of course, as I said, LinkedIn is my one and only when it comes to the social media. You can definitely find High Tides Consulting there as well to follow updates on the business. And I would love to offer your listeners a gift because we do have an assessment that helps people look at some of their own workplace behaviors and think about how they show up in ways that could be more beneficial to creating bridges to different communities. And so they can find that at hightidesconsulting.co/podcast/cultivating.
Love that. Thank you so much for being here. I love this conversation, and I'm so glad that you are able to spend some time with us this afternoon, and we appreciate you being here. Thank you so much.
My pleasure, and hopefully we'll get to do it again real soon.
That's right, absolutely.